Hello, this video is about my personal experiences and impressions while backpacking in Iran for 3 weeks in August 17. This video is for people who want to travel in Iran and who want to get a general idea about how it is from a tourist point of view. This video might get a little bit longer, so here are the main topics and there are time codes in the description box below, so you can jump to the topics you're interested in. You don't have to watch the whole video. I'd also like to say that I've wrote down a few notes, so sometimes I might look down and check if I'm still on the right path. Before we get started, I'd like to say that I'm not an Iran expert. Everything I say is based on my personal experience or of those of other travelers I've met in Iran. If you have a different opinion or a different experience, that's awesome. Let me know in the comment section below. Let's start with the general journey and my impressions. So here's my travel itinerary. I came in from Armenia, I went to Tabriz, from there I went to Tehran, Kashan and Isfahan, then we went to Varzohneh and came back to Isfahan, then we did Shiraz, Yazd and Mashhad, from where I left for Turkmenistan. I have to admit that these 3 weeks were quite packed. The route is very popular amongst solo travelers, so you're gonna meet your fellow travelers again quite a few times, which can be quite nice. I didn't organize anything in advance except for my visa. I had a rough itinerary which also got changed a few times during the trip, and I didn't bring a guidebook, which would have been actually a good idea. Getting from one place to another is quite easy. The infrastructure is quite well developed. There are several buses going between the bigger cities each day. The tickets can be reserved or booked online, either via your host or your hostel or your guest house, or you can just go to the bus station, buy a ticket right there. Depending on the route you want to go, you might have to pay, to buy it one day in advance, because it might be sold out for the same day. The buses itself, or especially the overnight buses, are usually quite comfortable. They give you loads of space for a very decent price. I also took one night train from Tabriz to Tehran, which was also very comfortable. We were 4 guys in a cabin and we had loads of space, and we even had a television. And the last option to get around, you can hitchhike. I only did it once when I came in from Armenia because there was actually nothing. Hitchhiking was quite easy, and this actually led to my best experience in Iran. Okay, let's talk about budget accommodation. There are hostels and guest houses and homestays in Iran, but it's not particularly easy to find them. Not all hostels are on hostelworld.com. A few you can find on hostellsiran.com. Guest houses as well, but the easiest thing is just to ask your fellow travelers where they stayed, and you just contact that guest house or hostel and make a reservation. For that you need an Iranian SIM card, which is also very useful and not too expensive. My first impressions was that Iranians are very friendly. You hear the phrase "welcome to Iran" quite a lot. You do many handshakes and selfies, and in the beginning it seemed that there are not too many foreigners or not too many tourists, but which will change as soon as you get to the more touristic areas. Communication can be a problem. People do speak basic English. The younger generation's English can be quite good, but get a dictionary in advance or learn a few phrases in Farsi. The cities are quite well developed. The climate was very dry and hot when it was August, and so was the landscape. Dry. A lot of rocks and a lot of desert, like things I've never seen before, and that was really amazing. Food-wise, from a vegan point of view, it was okay. There are vegan options. I basically had falafel almost every day, but then there's also vegan soup. It's called ash, and of course fruits. Fruits were super delicious. And talking about food, there is no alcohol, of course. You do have alcohol-free beer. You can find it almost everywhere. Which you also can find and get everywhere is tea. Anytime, anywhere. If you go to a normal restaurant, it can be difficult communicating, like asking for ingredients, like is there meat in it or not. So if you're vegetarian or vegan, just bring a few nuts, bring a few fruits, so you don't have to starve. I also use Happy Cow to find a few vegan-friendly restaurants. At one place, they even had vegan kebab, which was quite awesome. If you eat everything, then I guess finding food is no problem. You will get around quite easy. Safety. I felt safe actually all the time, like during the day, during the night, in a big city, on the countryside. Like, it didn't seem that anyone wanted to bother me, even though before I visited Iran, like a few months earlier, there was a terrorist attack, and I actually went to that street because it was just between the hostel and the bazaar, and it felt like it didn't feel unsafe at all. There was one thing that happened to a friend of mine. His cell phone got stolen in the subway, in a very packed subway in Tehran. But there's one thing you should consider, like filming. You should not film police or military of these kind of things. There's actually a German YouTuber. He got into a situation where he was couchsurfing at one guy's place, and one of this guy's friend was from Secret Service, and he saw that German YouTuber filming, so he got into big troubles for nothing. So be careful, and I hope that you're not that unlucky like he was. Like, he had to go to court, he had to stay there he had to extend his stay for 2 months, couldn't go home. Bad story. But this does not necessarily mean that you cannot film or take pictures. Usually you can. So now we're gonna talk about curiosities and surprises. Of course, many of these curiosities or surprises could have been avoided if I would have done more research in advance, but at that time I didn't have quite enough time. Okay, so let's start with the first thing. That's the calendar. In Iran, they follow the Persian calendar, so it's a different year, a different month, and a different date compared to the Georgian calendar. I don't want to get into details, but by the time I was there, August 17, it was the 5th month of 1394. Does this affect you in any way? Well, it does sometimes, because official documents and your visa will have the Persian calendar's date on it, but they will also have the Georgian calendar dates on it as well. There are also different numbers, and you better learn them. So here they are. Instead of Arabic numbers, they use Persian numbers, which I actually did not expect at all. So once you get used to it, which you should, otherwise you can't read the prices or bus numbers, it's quite easy. Another surprise I forgot to mention is that many people in Iran, they have nose jobs. So a lot of people are walking around with a small white bandage over their nose. In the beginning, I thought people would just get into fights and stuff, but after a while, a Iranian dude explained to me that no, this is because of, well, plastic surgery. And I even saw a mannequin who got a nose job, like a mannequin with a small white bandage. Okay, let's talk about dress code. The only dress code for men is that they have to wear long pants all the time in public areas. Unless you do sport. Unless people see that you're actually doing sport, you can wear shorts. I was wearing my tie pants with my flip-flops and my shirt, like a short sleeve shirt. That was totally fine. When you're in a hostel or your guest house, you can wear whatever you like. But in public, long pants for men. For women, on the other hand, you'll have to wear a long sleeve as well and cover your hair. But again, when you're inside, when you're in a hostel or a guest house, you can wear whatever you like. Another thing concerning women and men is that in public transportation, such as the metro or inner city buses, women and men are separated from each other. A woman can enter a male section of a subway or where all the guys are if she is with another man. In that case, if you're there with a girlfriend or if you're there with a boyfriend, you should be really close together, that it is quite obvious that you're a couple or that you're married. Otherwise there will be confusion, and that can be quite bad. Another thing was the internet. It is kind of slow, but I mean, I didn't go there to surf the internet, and it is slow, and a few things are blocked, such as YouTube and Couchsurfing.com. So if you want to use Couchsurfing.com in Iran, get a VPN in advance. Couchsurfing is blocked because it's illegal, even though it's very popular. It's super easy to find a host, and I really recommend you to give it a try. So Charles and I, we couchsurfed in Isfahan, and it was a really cool experience. We had a great host, and we learned a lot about the culture, the city, just the daily life. So get a VPN and try to find a nice couchsurfing host. Another thing that really surprised me from day one was the usage of the word Arier. In Germany, Arier is not used commonly, but in Iran I heard it almost every time I introduced myself and when it was about Germany. In this context, Arier is not used like in bad terms, as Persians see themselves as the true Arier. So this was a little bit surprising for me, just to hear it all the time. And you know, when you're sitting there with a few other people and they talk, and then they talk about you, and then they use the word Arier quite a lot, or they talk about your father or your family. So that was a little bit weird. Let's get to the next topic, and that's money. So let me start with credit and debit cards. You can't use them in Iran. So if you want to go there and travel there, you have to think about how much money you're gonna need, and you're gonna bring it in cash, if possible in euro. And then you're gonna exchange it, and then you can spend it. The only way to use a credit card is if you want to buy our carpet, or maybe in a super fancy hotel. I'm not sure, but usually you can't. And then if you want to exchange money, it starts to get a little bit tricky, because that's when you get introduced to Toman. So the official currency of Iran is real. The biggest bill is 500,000 real, but the prices you see are in Toman. Toman is a substitutional currency, I'd say, and the exchange rate between real and euro doesn't matter. What matters is the exchange rate between Toman and euro. Okay, so that's how you exchange money. 1 euro equals 4,500 Toman, and 1 Toman equals 10 real. So you still use the real bills, but you calculate in Toman. Okay, let's say I want to exchange 1 euro. This equals 4,500 Toman, which equals 45,000 real. So I get like 2 20,000 real bills and 1 5,000 real bills. That's it. So if you walk into a shop and you see a price tag, and the price tag says 5,000, it means it's 5,000 Toman, which means you have to give the person a 50,000 real bill. Well, that's how the money system works, and I gotta say, in the beginning I was confused AF. I had no idea how it worked. So I would just open my wallet and tell them, please take what you need. Because I was so confused. Another thing is if you go to restaurants, like some restaurants, instead of saying this meal costs 50,000 Toman, it says that the meal costs 50. 50 in this case means 50,000, which means 500,000 real, which is about like 11 euros. You just keep it in mind. Or just ask the waitress. But after a while you get used to it. So changing money is quite easy. You will find a lot of places where you can change money, like usually close to bazaars, or in Tehran there's a big intersection where there are loads of places where you can change, where you can exchange, and you can look for the best rate basically, and sometimes you also can bargain a bit. So let's talk about the costs. Iran is relatively cheap. Accommodation was the only thing which, compared to the other costs, was kinda expensive. I usually paid around $10 per night for a hostel or a guest house. Transportation, like I said before, night buses and night trains are also pretty cheap. It's usually, like a night bus is usually about 1 euro per hour. So if you know, like you're gonna take a bus from Yas to Mashhad, it's about 13 hours, so you're gonna pay around 13 euros. It shouldn't be much more. Just keep that in mind. It should not be much more. So food, in my case, falafel and fruits, is really cheap. A falafel sandwich, like a really big one, is usually around 70 to 80 cents. And fruits, like a really nice watermelon, is about half a euro. So other food and restaurants are also relatively cheap. I'd say you can get a decent meal, like with some rice and some Iranian dish, for around 3 euros. Sites such as museum, mosques and others are usually around 5 euro for foreigners, which is not too much, but if you visit several places during a day, it can get quite pricey. Locals pay around 1 euro. So if you look Middle Eastern and if you know some pharmacy, maybe you can get a discount. Okay, talking about getting a discount leads to the next subject, bargaining. For taxis, we did bargain. It didn't help a lot, to be honest. Souvenirs, on the other hand, I didn't buy any, but I think you can, especially at the very touristic places. But I gotta say, all in all, the prices are usually pretty fair. Like bargaining here is not such a big thing, like if you compare to Southeast Asia, for example. Okay, that's it about money. Let's get emotional, and we're gonna talk about the good and bad experiences and impressions I've made. Let's start with the good ones. So visiting Iran in general was a very epic experience. It's very different from anything I've seen before, country-wise, culture-wise, landscape-wise, and it literally broadened my horizon, which is always a good thing. I learned a lot about the culture, about the people, the daily life, which basically helped me to understand another country of this planet. The next thing, you know it, hospitality. I've been told that Iranians are very welcoming and enjoy having foreigners as their guests, but especially what happened in Tabriz was out of this world. I was staying with his family for 3 days. We did a lot of stuff together. I don't want to get into details. Click here for the video. But it was epic. Also, as I mentioned before, Couchsurfing is a big thing, which was also a great experience to get to know the local life of the people. The food was also very different from anything I've ever had before, except for the falafel, but there were also a lot of other stuff I could try, and that was really nice. It's just very refreshing for your taste buds to get into something completely new. Another highlight, or another good impression from me was the landscapes. I didn't see all of it, I didn't went to the north, but what I see was amazing, was mind-blowing. Again, very different from anything I've seen before. Another good thing about Iran is that it's not too expensive. You definitely can travel here on a budget, and it's quite easy to get around, but you have to do some research. Like, you have to figure out the bus stations, you have to figure out the trains. I have to admit, I did get lost a few times, but then there is always a helpful Iranian dude who helped me out. Okay, so this was the good stuff. It's easy to travel, it's not expensive, landscape was amazing. People, most of the people are very friendly, very welcoming. And now let's get to the bad stuff. One thing I mentioned in the very beginning was the Arier, which actually surprised me at first, but then there's another thing, and that's the Nazi thing. I don't even know how to explain it, but, well, it seems that Hitler's reputation in Iran is not too bad. I'm just gonna leave it there and say that that's not really cool. Another thing, I was staying in this guest house and I introduced myself, and after a while we went out for a walk. And the owner of the guest house, which I didn't like, to be honest, he was walking next to me, and at one point he was saying, "Are you sure you're from Germany? Because you don't look like Adolf Hitler." What the fuck? I don't even know what to say. Like, this just... Okay, first, he's Austrian. And second, like, why? Why? Okay, my background, so my mom's Chinese, my father is German, I was brought up in Germany, I lived there most of my life. And then there's another thing is, when I introduce myself, and I say, like, hey, like, my name is this, and I'm from Germany, people usually say, "Germany? No, you're not from Germany." And then they start guessing, like, China, Korea, Japan. And that was fucking annoying. And this happens several times a day. And actually a friend of mine, he's half German, half Japanese, he had the same issue, and it's so annoying. Like, after a while I would just say, "Yeah, hi, I'm from Korea." Next thing, which is a little bit more serious, these are the differences between men and women. So many Iranians I've met, they're very like non-conservative, they're very liberal, so they don't really agree with these weird rules they have, like the rules women have to obey. Women have to obey, like they're not allowed to sing in public or dance in public or show their hair and their dress codes. As a guy, as I said before, I didn't experience that myself, but I've been told from female travel followers that it obviously has a big impact on their travel and on their overall experience about the country. The last bad thing I want to talk about is littering, and there was a lot of litter, especially in the countryside. Like people in their cars and their buses, they just throw stuff out the window and they don't care. Of course, Not everybody's like that. Like, definitely not everybody's like that. I've had many people who are very cautious about the environment. But when we went from Shiraz, like from the city Shiraz to Persepolis, next to the road there was so much plastic. I don't know if you can see it in this clip, but it was crazy. And that's really sad. Okay, so now we're gonna talk about the last topic, and these are the tips for your trip. The first thing is quite obvious. Do some research and inform yourself if you know what you want to do, where you want to go, and what time of the year you want to go. When you plan your trip, don't overplan it. Leave room for changes. As I said before, I didn't really plan a lot. Like Kashan, for example, was a very spontaneous thing. Razane as well, and both turned out very nice. I mean, of course you should include a few main destinations such as Shiraz, Yazd or Isfahan, like 3 very interesting places, a lot of stuff to see. My personal favorite was Yazd, and of course the desert. The other thing, bring enough time. I'd say 4 weeks, that's quite decent, that's quite good, so you don't have to rush. I only had 3 weeks, so I couldn't do the north, for example, which was quite unfortunate. So I also advise you to visit the north. Actually, you can climb the highest mountain of the Middle East. It's in Iran. And a friend of mine, she did it. She posted her trip on Couchsurfing. She was saying that she's going to visit Iran, and many Iranians replied and said, yeah, you can stay at my place, this and that. And one guy, he said that he's going to climb the highest mountain of the Middle East with a few friends if she would like to join him. And yeah, she did, and she said it was amazing. I think this is one of very, very unique experiences. Like, first climbing the highest mountain of the Middle East, and then with a group of Iranians. That's really cool. And if you do plan to use Couchsurfing, I would suggest you that you bring a few gifts from back home. So maybe a souvenir or a postcard or something, just to give something back. Another thing you could bring is a Polaroid camera, which is also pretty cool. You could take some pictures together. Iranians really love selfies. And of course, you could learn some basic Farsi or Persian just to get around, just to say hello, how are you, thank you, and goodbye. And keep in mind that Friday is a holiday, so many shops and restaurants are closed, which probably doesn't affect touristic area as much as non-touristic areas. Another thing I would advise you is don't talk about sensitive stuff like politics or Iranians' relation with other countries unless you know that person really well. And also, prepare yourself for the squat toilet. And the Bumgun usually places have Western toilets, but if not, then get ready to squat. If you've done it before, it's not a big deal. If you haven't, then you'll learn it. It's not that difficult. And if you're used to use toilet paper, bring some when you go to a toilet. Because sometimes there's none, and then you have to use a bum gun, which can also be quite an interesting experience. And last but not least, be open-minded. If someone says, do you want to stay in my home for a night, and that person seems really nice, say yes. Or do you want to have a picnic with us? Having a picnic is super popular, especially during the night. Say yes. Do you want to buy a carpet? If you don't want to buy a carpet, say no. To be honest, I could keep talking for another hour about all kind of different topics, but I think that's it. I hope I didn't forget anything important. If so, write a comment and let me know. And I cannot guarantee that everything I've said is correct, because things do change sometimes. And maybe I just said something wrong. If so, please feel free to correct me with a comment or write me a message. I hope this video wasn't too long or too boring. If you go to Iran, I hope this video helped you a little bit, and I wish you all the best and safe travels. Feel free to check out my channel somewhere here, and somewhere here is a best of Iran, and somewhere here is a playlist. So I hope to see you soon. Bye.